Craig Kimbrel is a solidly above average MLB pitcher as things stand today. Now, some might not think that's much of an eyeball-grabbing headline. After all, Kimbrel's been designated for years as a hot and cold phenomenon, being just as capable of striking out 15 in a 6-inning stretch as giving up 5 homers in that same span. But Kimbrel, who today is pitching for the Baltimore Orioles and currently has an ERA plus just north of 110, wasn't always this way. No, in fact, it's probably fair to say that even last season's version of Craig, when, as a member of the Phillies, he made his 9th All-Star team, struck out 94 over 69 innings, and registered an ERA plus of 134, was still somehow less than half the pitcher he used to be. I'm not knocking Kimbrel at all. He's still a usable big league pitcher at 36 years old, which is impressive for a relatively undersized power arm. I'm just trying to illustrate how dominant he was to begin his career, how he came out of the gate being more unhittable than any pitcher had ever been, and then stayed at that level for basically the next half decade. So staggering was this run that it defies easy analysis. Some of his numbers seem to be the work of fiction, reading almost like the fabricated story of Sid Finch, the fake Mets prospect who could throw 168 miles per hour and played the French horn. Kimbrel, at his peak, was truly Finch-like. Pitchers weren't supposed to reduce the best hitters in the world to helpless hacks who couldn't even manage to make contact in the form of foul tips. They weren't supposed to strike out literally over half of the batters they faced in a full relief season. They weren't supposed to register numbers that made them about 4 times as good as an average MLB pitcher. That's why today I wanted to take a closer look at the insanity of Craig Kimbrel at the height of his powers, detailing to my best efforts the abject domination of a kid from Huntsville, Alabama, who, somehow, wasn't even the best pitcher on his high school team. Now listen, there's probably a lot of things I could say about today's sponsor, Game Time, as an app that would make you want to give them a try. Like how you can actually see the view from whatever seat you're going to buy, invaluable information to me, their lowest price guarantee, or how they actually recommend the best value tickets for your event. But instead of going too far into that, I instead want to do something different. I want to show you what my last month has looked like through Game Time. Yeah, that's right, over the last 30 days, I've managed to go to 5 different Angels games, and affordably I might add. I don't make the kind of money to sit behind home plate every night. This simply would not have been possible without Game Time, as it's pretty much the only app I use now for anything sports related, music adjacent, or even community events based. Because of all the features I mentioned before, as well as their optional fees included pricing structure, I've easily bought over 40 tickets through Game Time over the past few years. So, if you find this in any way convincing, you can use code MTC for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the Game Time app, make an account, and then use code MTC for $20 off your first purchase. Now, back to our video. Most hurlers who weren't drafted out of high school in the late 2000s faced especially long odds of making it to the show, especially if they were barely 6 feet tall, weighed 160 pounds, and threw in the mid-80s. This pretty much described Craig Kimbrel, who was the second best pitcher at Lee High School behind lefty Buddy Boschers, who was 6'3" and 200 pounds, just the kind of prospect D1 teams were looking for. Kimbrel posted a 3-7 record while being pretty wild on the mound, unable to control most of his pitches. He didn't even make the All-City team, so it made sense no D1 schools bothered with him. Kimbrel instead accepted an offer to play at Wallace State Community College in Huntsville, Alabama, after the coach saw him pitch in a showcase. Then, the summer before he left for school, Kimbrel suffered an injury that would in many ways change his life for the better. Since Kimbrel was 12, he'd spend his summers working with his dad, who was an electrician. On that fateful day, before Kimbrel could install an outlet in a house he was working on, he had to move a stack of sheetrock. If you've ever handled sheetrock before, you know it's bulky and cumbersome, and the last place you'd want to drop it on is your foot. But that's what Kimbrel did. Not one sheet, mind you, but 12. He'd be in a cast for 3 months, about 3 times longer than normal for a break, because the bone that connected the big toe to the rest of his foot was dislocated. He couldn't stand and throw, but he could do 2 things: lift weights that focused on his upper body, and throw from his knees with a cast on. Lots of players throw from one knee as a training method, but Kimbrel was throwing from 2. 20 minutes a day, 6 days a week. After 8 weeks, Kimbrel could throw a baseball from third base to the right field foul pole. Then he could throw out the length of a soccer field. The drill taught him how to generate torque with his upper body, and how to get perfect backspin as he released the ball. The weightlifting also added pounds of muscle, and by the time the season started in the spring, Kimbrel was touching 95 instead of 85. Because of the injury, Kimbrel started his career as a closer because he wasn't built up to start. It seemed to match his natural competitive nature. He went 8-0 as a freshman, good enough for the Braves to draft him in the 33rd round. But instead of signing, Craig decided to return to Wallace State and again dominated, posting a record of 9-3 as a starter this time, while fanning 123 in 81 innings. The Braves had seen enough at this point to draft him in the 3rd round, and so his professional journey began, but not before hitting a major roadblock. The year was 2009, and Craig was in the process of getting demoted from High A Myrtle Beach back to Low A Rome because his ERA had ballooned to 10.97. That's right, 10.97. Why? Kimbrel was trying to improve his changeup, which would cause him to drop his arm and mess with his mechanics overall. A coach in Rome said to forget the changeup and just be a 2-pitch power guy, using his elite fastball with ride and biting knuckle curve to just straight out blow past hitters. Kimbrel took the advice and ran with it, striking out 103 batters in 60 innings between Single-A, Double-A, and Triple-A over the next 2 summers. By 2010, he was in Atlanta to stay, where in 20 2/3 innings he struck out 40 batters, a rate of 17.4 Ks per 9. His ERA plus in that time frame, an otherworldly 9.14, built on the back of a 0.44 ERA, no homers allowed, and just 9 hits against. At the time, you probably would have thought, that's a fluke. There's no way he could possibly do something close to that for an entire season. But you'd have been wrong, as he basically went out and did exactly that in 2011, his official rookie campaign. To give you just one example of his dominance, he surrendered one of his only earned runs on June 10th. The next one he'd give up would be on September 9th. In between were 37 2/3 innings over 38 appearances, in which he allowed just 1 extra base hit while striking out 67 batters. By the end of the year, he ranked first among all MLB relievers in WAR, Ks, hits per 9, and WHIP. He set a rookie record with 46 saves and was unanimously chosen as NL Rookie of the Year. His stuff is truly electric out there, Mets third baseman David Wright said. You don't see too many guys throwing 98, and you definitely don't see too many guys that make it look as easy as he does with the life. And it's not like he's 7 feet tall out there either. In fact, even to this day, when Kimbrel delivers the ball to home plate, his release point is only about 5 feet off the ground, as the ball explodes from his 3/4 slot. That means when he pitches up in the zone, the pitch looks like it's coming out of his jersey and then just keeps on rising. The only blemish in the whole season was when Craig blew a save in Game 162 to the Phillies, part of one of the greatest 129 minutes in baseball history, when multiple pennant races climaxed within minutes of each other. Kimbrel got his revenge on the league, however, by absolutely destroying everything in his path over the next few seasons. In 2011 up through 2014, Kimbrel put up arguably the greatest run by a reliever in the history of Major League Baseball, such as in 2012 when Kimbrel struck out more than half of the batters he faced. 231 came up to hit against him, and 116 sat right back down. No one had ever done that over a full season. That same year, he set the record for the lowest batting average against as well, at just 126. Yet, that same season, Kimbrel walked only 6.1% of batters, with an ERA of 1.01. No other pitcher in baseball history had struck out so many, walked so few, with an ERA that low while pitching more than 60 innings. He never gave up more than 1 hit or 1 run in an inning all season. All of that translated to an ERA plus of 3.99, making him almost 4 times better than an average MLB pitcher. I'm throwing 89-mile-per-hour fastballs, and he's throwing 87, 88-mile-per-hour curveballs, teammate Chris Medlin said. It's hard to even understand how he gives up any runs. Not many, though, obviously. By now, what Kimbrel was best known for, aside from his dominance, was his pre-pitch stare down of the batter. Again, to this day, he stands on the mound, leaning over, his right arm angled like he's throwing a punch. If you were to do that and throw 92, it'd be a joke. But when you strike out over half of the batters you face in the best league in the world with an exploding 99, it's straight intimidating. Between 2012 and 2014, he converted 93.6% of his save opportunities, while the league average hovered at around 70%. One save, though, he didn't get was in the 2012 wildcard game against the Cardinals, which the Braves lost 6-3. Kimbrel pitched a perfect inning for his part, but the game overall was marred by a disputed infield pop-up ruling that cost the Braves momentum. The following season, in 2013, the Braves made it to NLDS against the Dodgers, with Kimbrel picking up a save in Game 2, but when facing elimination in Game 4, the Braves took a 3-2 lead in the 8th inning. Instead of bringing in the game's best closer for a 6-out save, Kimbrel watched from the dugout as David Carpenter gave up a 2-run home run to Juan Uribe, and the Braves went home again. That season, Kimbrel had actually registered his career high in saves with 50, along with posting another ERA plus north of 300 at 3.11. His ERA, again a staggeringly low 1.21. However, things were soon to change in Atlanta. There was no postseason for the Braves in 2014 as the team stumbled to 4 games under 500, but they still had the game's best closer to dangle as trade bait following, as Craig had again dominated the world that year en route to a 1.61 ERA, 2.23 ERA plus, and nearly 14 Ks per 9. All of that along with his 4th straight season with over 40 saves. So it was right before the 2015 season opened, the Braves pulled the trigger, trading Kimbrel and BJ Upton to the Padres for a host of prospects that ended up resulting in a draft pick that became Austin Riley, also getting rid of Upton's onerous salary. A good move for the Braves in retrospect. At that point, Kimbrel had the all-time best ERA at 143 and the all-time best K rate at 42.2 in MLB history for pitchers who'd thrown over 250 innings. He was just 27 years old. He'd grown up a Braves fan, but the Braves were now in rebuild mode and needed to replenish their farm system and shed salary. The Padres wanted to win now, and in a flurry of trades gave out prospects like Max Fried, Trey Turner, and Yasmani Grandal, all en route to finishing 6 games under 500 themselves. Ouch. 2015 proved to be the first season that Kimbrel appeared to be human. He saved 39 games and 42 chances, but his ERA ballooned to 2.58 as he gave up more hits and homers than he had ever had. His ERA plus of 145, while still good, was by far the worst total of his career. The next season, the Padres, since they traded every decent prospect they'd have the previous offseason, decided to pivot again, now back to prospect acquisition mode, sending Kimbrel to the Red Sox for Manuel Margot and 3 other prospects who mostly amounted to nothing. Though he was coming off a poor season by his standards, he was under team control until 2018, and still had elite stuff. The 2016 version of Kimbrel again didn't match his all-time greatness, as his ERA reached another career high at 3.40, which led to another career worst in ERA plus at 132, being down now by a factor of over 3 from when he was at his best. So, was his dominance a thing of the past? Would he sink into the realm of simply dominant relievers, down from the pantheon of the all-timers? Not for at least one more year, because in 2017, Kimbrel came roaring back with a vengeance. The numbers were so surreal that teammate Joe Kelly said, "You couldn't even do that in a video game. The game won't let you strike out that many," and he's doing it in the major leagues. He's the best stuff I've ever seen. By mid-June, his batting average against was just .086. In May, he gave up exactly 1 hit. Over his first 30 appearances, just 46 balls were put into play. He was striking out 53.2% of hitters. He went on to dominate the rest of the year as well, striking out his second highest rate of batters ever at 16.4 per 9. He saved 35 games, had an immaculate and 4 strikeout inning, and finished with an ERA plus of 319. The first time since 2013 he had climbed back to that lofty perch, 3 times better than an average hurler. But in the postseason, he didn't equal his regular season brilliance. Needing to force a Game 5 to stay alive, the Sox used Kimbrel in the 8th inning with the game tied at 3. With a runner on first, Kimbrel threw 1 to the backstop and then walked George Springer, before battling Josh Reddick, who ended up grounding a single to left to put the Astros on top for good. The Red Sox would storm back the following year, winning the World Series in 2018, with Kimbrel having an excellent, if not insane, regular season, with 42 saves and a 2.74 ERA. He did manage to set a few MLB records along the way though, like becoming the youngest player in MLB history to reach 300 saves at age 29, along with doing it in the fewest appearances at 474, and save chances at 330. But again, October baseball gave him fits. He saved 2 games against the Yankees in the ALDS, but gave up 3 runs in 2 1/3 innings. In the ALCS against the Astros, he gave up runs in his first 2 outings, though he again earned saves in both. Before Game 5, former closer Eric Gagne relayed to Sox manager Alex Cora that Kimbrel was tipping his pitches. Kimbrel tried to make the corrections necessary on the fly. In the World Series against the Dodgers, he saved Game 2 but gave up a 2-run home run to Kike Hernandez in Game 4. In the clincher, it was Chris Sale who pitched the 9th. He was a free agent following the trophy hoisting, and the Red Sox decided to let him walk. In 2019, Kimbrel would end up signing an MLB contract until June 5th, for 3 years, $43 million for the Cubs. He went on to, for the first time in his MLB career, struggle mightily in limited action, battling through knee inflammation en route to the lowest ERA plus of his career at just 68, meaning he was only a bit better than half of an average MLB pitcher, based on a bloated ERA of 6.53 with just 13 saves. He pitched just 20 2/3 innings in total, his lowest total since his first year, and gave up 9 homers in this time span. This from the man who had given up just 1 hit in a month 2 years before. The next season was 2020 COVID, and Kimbrel struggled again, posting another season where he was below average on the mound overall with an ERA plus of just 87 in 15 1/3 innings. He even lost his closer role to Jeremy Jeffress, but did manage to pitch 1 1/3 scoreless innings in the wildcard series against the Marlins. But Craig wasn't ready to hang up his cleats following a couple down years, as he came out firing in 2021, and by June 15th, he led the majors in saves with 18, with an ERA that was back down to a microscopic 0.66. The Cubs were winning, and life was good. Kimbrel's ERA plus was back in the stratosphere at 865. His whip was 0.71, and he was fanning 15.7 per 9. In other words, he seemed to be back to his old self. Sadly, so were the Cubs, who started losing massively before trading away anyone of value at the deadline, including Kimbrel to the White Sox, who already had a closer in Liam Hendricks. That meant Kimbrel had to adjust to being a setup man, and, needless to say, he didn't take well to the new role, going 2-2 with an ERA of 5.09, looking much more like the 2019-2020 versions of himself than the one he had presented in the first half of the season. He ended up allowing 3 runs over 2 innings in the ALDS against the Astros, in a series the White Sox would lose. His journey, nevertheless, continued, as before the 2022 season, he was traded to the Dodgers for AJ Pollock. LA needed a closer, and Craig needed a chance at redemption. He He wouldn't really find it, however, as he blew 5 saves in just 32 chances while posting a 108 ERA+, and to make matters worse, after he walked in the winning run on September 27th, the Dodgers decided to wash their hands of him completely, leaving him off their postseason roster entirely. That led to him signing a 1-year deal with the Phillies, where he would rebound somewhat, making his 9th All-Star team after a rough start. 20 games in, his ERA had been at 6, but he'd finished strong, saving 23 games with an ERA of 3.26. His K rate bounced back to 33.8%, and his batting average against was down to 181. Then came the postseason, and again, Kimbrel struggled. He gave up basically nothing in the first 2 rounds, but in the NLCS against the Diamondbacks, he went 0-2 with an ERA of 12. He's now with the Orioles and has again been up and down, going 4-1 so far with 12 saves and an ERA of 3.15. The Orioles are again set to make the playoffs, but given that Kimbrel's career postseason ERA is 4.50, fans have to be wondering if they can trust him with the ball in October against the likes of Soto, Judge, Ramirez, or Seager. Craig Kimbrel is now simply an above-average major league pitcher. He's no longer at the peak of his all-time great powers, but few are when they're 36 years old. He currently ranks 5th all-time in saves, and has a chance to overtake Frankie Rodriguez for 4th place when he gets to 438. For all of his struggles over recent years, he still managed to convert 88.4% of saves in his career, better than even the great Mariano Rivera at this point. And he had, undoubtedly, one of the most dominant stretches ever between 2010 and 2014. Will he make the Hall of Fame? Well, he got to 400 saves, pitching in 707 innings, faster than anyone else in MLB history. His career ERA plus of 170 would be the 2nd best mark ever if he manages to reach 1,000 career innings pitched. But Billy Wagner had a better mark than this at 187 in 903 innings, and he hasn't exactly glided into the Hall. Overtaking Frankie Rodriguez for 4th place all-time in saves won't guarantee him a spot in Cooperstown either. Frankie himself isn't there after all. Regardless of whether he ends up getting elected, he will still go down as one of the most dominant hurlers ever to pick up a baseball, and for a prime period of almost half a decade, put up numbers that baseball had never quite seen before. In our minds here at MTC, that alone deserved examination, and more than a little celebration as well. Now, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, please consider liking and subscribing and checking out this playlist for more essay content just like this. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.